They're sipping tea, and we said, we're not sure what to do. We send people to Washington, D.C., and they don't do what we ask them to do. And they would sit there and nod. What else? You know, we have men on the Supreme Court, and we ask them to uphold the Constitution, and they ignore the Constitution, and they would sit and nod wisely. And we would say, we elect presidents to do our bidding, to be there for the people, and to stand for the Constitution. And they stand in front of the nation, and they raise their right hand, and they put their hand on the Bible, and they swear an oath to uphold the Constitution, and they fail to uphold the Constitution. And we don't know what to do. And I imagine that they would look at us and they would say, well, have you tried Article 5? And we would say, no. And they would shake their heads in disbelief, and they would say, we gave you a gift. We knew such a time would come. We knew tyranny would reign across the land. We knew that a tyrant would sit in the White House. We knew that power would centralize. We knew that you would suffer under the heavy hand of a centralized federal government, and we gave you Article 5 for such a moment. You know, it's incredible because I think it's not up to us. The course of history is laid out for us by prophets. And it's incredible that we've come to this moment. Anybody read Mark Levin's book, The Liberty Amendments?
Yeah!
So when Mark was writing the Liberty Amendments, Mark and I communicate by email pretty regularly. And when he was writing Liberty Amendments, I knew he was writing a book. And he wouldn't talk about what it was about because he was embargoed by his publisher. And so I just knew he was writing a book. He's constantly writing books, and that's no surprise. Well, you know, I stumbled across Article 5 2 years ago and hosted a conference at Harvard with a very liberal law professor exploring the idea of a constitutional convention, an amending convention. And I was at this conference, and I was very neutral, and I just thought, well, we probably can't get it done. It's an interesting intellectual discourse. But 2 years later, having studied it much more and become much more interested in it, I was sitting on a panel in Phoenix. Hugh Hewitt is a conservative talk show host. He was hosting the panel, and Mark Levin was on the panel via Skype. And we each got to ask Mark a question. This is about 3 months ago, right? 4 months ago. And I'm on this panel, and I say to Mark, you know, it seems to me that we've lost control of the federal government. Nobody pays attention to us anymore. And it seems to me the only chance we have is by the people acting through the mechanism of the states which restrain the federal government. And I thought Mark was going to choke. And I could see him on the screen, and he was flustered. And it's pretty hard to fluster Mark Levin. And he said, you know, I'm doing some stuff around this, and I'm writing a book, and I can't really talk about it because it's embargoed. But I agree with you completely. And Mark, being the multitasker that he is, I look up at the screen and he is like this while he's texting. And my phone buzzes. I'm sitting on the desk and he says, "We need to talk." And so I called him afterwards and he told me what the book was about, swore me to secrecy. And I told him, miraculously, I'm working on a project called Convention of States. And the intent of this project called Convention of States is to rally the grassroots groups around the country to fight for the call for an amending convention under Article 5. So you're providing the intellectual framework and the intellectual firepower, and we're going to put the boots on the ground to actually make it happen. And miraculously, and again I would say providentially, we launched those projects, his book and Convention of States, the exact same week. Pretty incredible, isn't that? So, we talked about history, and you guys are making history. Now we can talk about the future, and how you guys are going to make history in the future. Because here's what we're going to do. We are calling an amending convention. We have a full organization, 7 full-time employees in Virginia. We're building out a volunteer network all over the country. I partnered with a guy by the name of Michael Ferris. And Dr. Ferris is the chancellor of Patrick Henry University in Virginia. He is also the founder of the Homeschool Legal Defense Association and the man who made homeschooling legal in all 50 states in America. Real American hero. He's also one of the only lawyers in American history to actually argue an Article 5 case before the United States Supreme Court during the fight about the ERA amendment, which was eventually defeated. So an extraordinary man. We brought in Rob Nadelson. He's a professor from law school in Montana. He works for the Independence Institute as a scholar in residence. He's the premier expert on the history of Article 5 in the United States of America. And we have put together a team that is second to none, and we're going to get this done all over the country. And this is how we're going to do it. You know, I used to think it sounded impossible to actually get this done. How do you get 2/3 or 34 states to actually make the call for an amending convention? You know, we talked to a lot of state legislators across the country because it's up to them to make this call. And we asked them, what does it take to get you to take action on something? How many people have to call your office about a particular issue? You're going to be amazed. For a state legislator in a single district, on average, they say, if I get 100 calls, that's it, I'm done. I got to do something. So look around this room. Do we have 100 people in a state legislative district that can make a call? And I thought, that's it. That's no problem. I mean, we're Tea Party. We get 100 people to make a phone call. So between the Tea Party network, between Mike Ferris's network of 300,000 homeschool families all over the country, we can definitely get the state legislatures to make the call. And here's the plan. Here's the way it rolls out. Next year, 2014, we already have 11 primary legislative sponsors in 11 different states around the country. We expect to have between 15 and 20 legislators put this up and pass the call in 2014. In 2015, we will finish the call in the rest of the states. And in 2016, we will have the first state-called, people-controlled, amending convention in the history of the United States of America. That's pretty exciting. Think about what you would do if you could get on the floor of that convention, and you will have that opportunity. You may be a delegate at that convention, and picture yourself there at the convention. Now, the purpose of the convention is limited by the call. You guys are going to love this call. It makes me tingle every time I think of it. The call specifically says, to be germane at this convention, the amendment proposed must limit the scope, power, or jurisdiction of the federal government. That's pretty good, isn't it? I love that. And I can hardly sleep until 2016 waiting for this. Now think about this. It's going to be during a presidential election year. Wouldn't you love to ask either of the candidates in a presidential election year, so how do you feel about the people wanting to take their power back? I'm definitely in favor of more power for the people, right? You know, we made Barack Obama run on a promise to cut the size of the federal government. He was lying, but we made him run on it. It's going to be incredible to see the candidates scrambling over each other because they can't push back against the movement of this time. So in 2000, and by the way, some people say, you know, it says in Article 5 that Congress shall call such a convention if the people demand it. And a lot of people say, well, what if Congress doesn't call? What happens? It says shall, but what if they don't, right? So here's our attitude. We don't need Congress. We don't need no stinking Congress. We're the people. That's our right enshrined in the Constitution. It's not up to them. When 34 states pass it, we will send an official legal notice to Congress, and the notice will say this. You have exactly 30 calendar days to pass the call, and if you do not, we will call the convention ourselves. So 2016, coming out of that convention, will be something amazing. There will be amendments that will restrain the scope, power, and jurisdiction of the federal government. Amendments like this. Anybody think we need to be able to have term limits at the federal level? You know, we passed that in 23 states, and then the Supreme Court told us that we, the people, have no right to determine the length of service of our congressional representatives. So we can do that through a convention. How about this? Do you know that when the framers wrote the Constitution and they started appointing Supreme Court justices, that the average life expectancy of a male was 45 years, and the average justice appointed was 45 years old? They didn't expect them to serve for very long. And now we have justices that are serving for decades and influencing constitutional jurisprudence in a way that the founders and the framers never intended. How about a 12-year term limit for Supreme Court justices? How about this? Over 75% of Americans, I can't believe it's not higher, but over 75% say that we shouldn't spend more money than we take in. How about a balanced budget amendment coming out of that amending convention? Are you guys in support of that? The things I just described to you are at least 75% issues in America today. Now, there are some people who will say, hey, we fear a runaway convention. What might happen if the left gains control of this convention? What kind of crazy amendments can they come down? Well, I'll tell you, folks on the right are scared of that. Folks on the left are scared of that too. And I can tell you, this is the way it works. It takes 3/4 of the states to ratify any amendment. 3/4 of the states, that's 38 states. Run the math any way you want. I can't find 38 states that will do something crazy and extreme. It takes a 75% issue. And I want to flip those numbers on you, because 38 states, you think about that. Think about this. Only 13 states have to oppose. Now, both houses in any state have to approve an amendment. So that actually means only one house in 13 states, so say 7 houses in 13 states oppose any amendment, and it dies. So there is no chance of a runaway convention. And let me ask you this. We said Congress isn't following the Constitution, right? We said that the President isn't following the Constitution. We said even the Supreme Court is not following the Constitution of the United States of America. So tell me this. Do we have a runaway convention in Washington, D.C. every day right now? Yes. So what is our risk? We have our choice. We have a permanent, abusive, tyrannical, runaway convention run by permanent politicians and bureaucrats in Washington, D.C. today, or we can put our faith where it should be, where it's always been since the founding of this country, with the people of the United States of America. Are you with the people? I'm with the people. So if you think that's a good idea, if you want to know more, if you want to get involved, it's really easy. You go to a website called conventionofstates.com. And there you can sign up to volunteer at Convention of States. You can volunteer just as somebody who's going to spread the word. You can download our Citizens and Legislators Handbook. You can volunteer to be a district captain in your own district, to be the one that finds those 100 people, to be the one that rallies the volunteers. We're going to provide all kinds of training and exciting things. Right here in this room, our own Janie Rapini, she volunteered to help us put together the training program for all those district captains and state captains. So a big round of applause once again to Janie Rapini. So here's what I would leave you with. Everybody in this room, every single one of you has a responsibility. We have a choice to make. When you go home tonight, when you look in the mirror, you got to ask yourself a question. You can't say, well, it's great to listen to Tom McClintock. He's so exciting, and it's so great we have guys like him in Washington, D.C., and you can brush your teeth and do it, but you can't do that. You can't do that. You can't listen to the SCF here, all these other great patriots that have done all this volunteer work, and say, man, it's so great that all those people are doing all that great stuff. And then you'll touch yourself and you'll say, you can't do that. Because men and women, ever since the fight for the founding of this country, have instead looked in that mirror and said, it's up to me. I have to step up. Because if I don't step up, how can I expect other people to step up? If I don't make the change, if I don't take that step forward, if I don't get in the fight and throw some punches, how can I expect other people to do it? There's only one way we're going to save this country. And make no mistake, the country is at stake right now. And the only way we're going to make a difference, the only way we're going to be remembered as the next greatest generation to save the country, is if every one of you guys step up. Are you guys going to step up with me? God bless you guys.